everybody. How you doing? I hope you're having a wonderful day, afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you're at. Thanks for tuning in to Ike Live. We got a good one for you today. Joining us in just a little bit, really sort of a guy that has been a big part of the sport for a long time. For me personally, he's been there from the very beginning. Not only someone I work with in the media, but someone I consider a friend. Craig Lamb is joining us in just a little bit. Craig, of course, from Bassmaster. Want to catch up on a few things real quick. Have a reminder here that the Ike Foundation has already announced our scholarship dates for this winter coming up. So head on over there if you want to support the scholarship program. We've got tickets already available for that night. It's going to be a great night. If you attended it last year, you know we had food, drink, auction. We even had some gambling. I don't know how they pulled that off, if it's legal or not, but join us again this year if you want to help out with our scholarship program. Also want to remind everybody, if you see the hat that I'm wearing right now, let me see if I can get the angle right. We have the Ike Hall of Fame hats available for purchase right now on the website. Guys, just like the t-shirt, these are limited edition. It's a very cool piece of memorabilia. I think they made maybe like 100 of these hats. So if you want a Ike Hall of Fame hat, head on over to MikeIconelli.com and put your order in before they're gone. It's definitely a really, really cool hat. Last housekeeping thing is just a note about the comments that we're getting about this new format for Ike Live 2.0. Thank you guys for all the great comments. I'm so glad, so happy you are enjoying this new, more personalized one-on-one interviews. I can tell you I'm having a blast with these guests, really getting to know them on a whole new level. So it's been a lot of fun for me. Keep sending in your comments, questions, guest ideas. Keep sending them over. There's some really good ones coming. And last but not least, this one just popped into my head. We do have an Ike Live Halloween special coming up Saturday. I think it's Saturday, October 28th. And we'll be back out in the old Ike Live studios out in the barn for that one. Don't miss it. The whole crew is going to be there for that one. We got some really, really unique costumes we're going to be displaying in this year's show. So that should be fun. All right. Enough of the small talk. I cannot wait to get this guy on. I've known him forever. I'm so happy to have him on Ike Live for the first time. Joining us now, the one and only Craig Lamb. What's up, man?
Hey, man. Hey, first of all, congratulations on your induction. It was truly rewarding for me to see you put that blue jacket on in that room of all those legends, you know?
Thank you. And it made it special to have guys like you there. It really did. And I'll be honest, like, when they made that announcement at the Classic this year, I was blown away, but it didn't feel real. Like it didn't feel real to me until that night. And, you know, getting there, you know, receiving the plaque and of course putting that jacket on. And man, it made me so emotional. Like, I'm actually thinking about it right now. I'm starting to tear up a little bit, but you know, my Uncle Don actually got to put the jacket on for me. And then, you know, to see you guys there, you know, all my heroes of the sport, from the other fishermen to the writers to, you know, people in the industry, to see them there, to have a blue jacket like them, dude, it's still kind of like a dream right now. I'm still like blown away. I got to know, what was the feeling like when you got inducted? Was it the same? Was it just like surreal? Was it crazy?
Well, first of all, we've got to get me inducted because I'm not in yet.
What? You're not in?
Not yet.
Wait a minute. Did I just do some foreshadowing here that I didn't expect?
Maybe I need to get nominated. So maybe this is.
I'm sorry and not sorry all at the same time, because let me tell you, I'm sorry because I apologize, because I honestly just assumed you were. So I'm sorry I didn't know that. But I'm not sorry because, Craig, I am here to tell you, and I'll throw myself under the bus. You deserve to be in there way more than I do. Way more than I do. Like, I'm shocked right now. I'm embarrassed, but I'm also shocked. Craig, you got to be in that Hall of Fame. You deserve to be there.
I appreciate that. I mean, the funny thing is now, as guys like you put them on, put the blue jacket on, not making you feel old, but most of those inductees, a lot of them saw me grow up, literally. Some of them literally saw me grow up when I was a teenager and earlier, like Rick Clunn, but yeah, I mean, they watched me literally grow up in all of this as long as I've been involved in it. It's truly an honor to be a part of it. I'm on the selection committee, and I might have some better news later in the year about having some more involvement, internally with the hall. But yeah.
You need to be there. I'm telling you right now, if you're watching and listening to this podcast and you cast a ballot, you get to cast a vote, please put Craig in because he needs to be there. It's a good segue what you just said. I think a lot of people from afar see you and see your name and they're like, oh yeah, he's the Bassmaster writer, man. He's good. Yeah. He's been doing it for probably about 10 years. Yeah. He's a good writer, but dude, you said it, you've been at this a really long time. I know your background is a little bit, but I do want to get into it a little bit. Like the way that I understand it, like you were a fan of the sport way before you got into doing this as a full-time gig. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's kind of a funny story. So, 76, my dad took me to my first tournament. I wanted to meet Rick Clunn. I wanted to see all those guys. Cause I mean, I connected to, like you did, I connected to this passion that I had. And it was such a fascination through Bassmaster magazine. That was my connection. That's all we had. And so I started going to the tournaments. I met Clunn and, Harold Sharp, actually the first tournament director, called me the original bass groupie. Because what I started doing is, I got my driver's license the next year in 77. We had a bass at a tournament on Percy Priest Lake. I worked a summer job at the marina where it was. And of course, Clunn won the tournament. And that's where I met him. And, like you probably did, or some other people did, I sent him a fan letter. Thought, whatever, and so I'm going to the mailbox every day. And sure enough, about a month later, it shows up. Wow. And it's like a 2-page deal. And then 78 came. I graduated from high school, went to Kentucky Lake Tournament. Oh, here, my program.
Whoa!
I had Ray Scott's. I stalked Ray Scott outside of his motel room, and when he came out, I show up with this thing, and I say, "Could you sign my program? I want to come to work for Bass." And he just kind of laughed and he signed it. Yeah, good luck, kid. And I was relentless. I wanted to get a job in the industry. So what happened? Eventually I got into college. I mean, there's no major for this in college, but I went to college. Yeah. And while my roommates were going to Daytona to chase girls, Bass usually had a tournament during that week somewhere, and I would go to that tournament. I know a couple of times I slept in Randy Fight's van. That's Clunn's cousin. Roll away, and I just bum, it kept going from there. I got to practice fish with Clunn one year. Actually spent one or more summers at his house. Sleeping on the couch, just a daggum couch bum. And, I'd go to tournaments with him. And finally I went from the groupie to getting the job. Harold Sharp laughed about it. He said, yeah, now I know why you were doing this. I said, yeah, that's right.
Oh, man. This is so amazing to hear this because for a lot of you listening, like Rick Clunn has this, he's my superstar, when I was a kid. Like he was the guy that I'm just and like to this day, it's just funny to say this, but to this day, I know Rick now, like he's a friend, but still get nervous around him. But to have those experiences with Rick as a kid, it's like mind blowing for me to try to put myself there at that time. That must've been an amazing experience.
Oh yeah. Cause that's when he had started winning classics, he'd already won backs and, he was really, he was going through that mental all of that stuff that's going on. And yeah, I mean, I was so fortunate to be part of that, and for him to allow me, because he is a different person.
Yeah.
To allow me into his personal life is great, because from there I got to know people like Hank Parker, and he would let me tag along. And Jimmy and Chris Houston were, they were like road mom and dad to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many that I just met along the way, and like I said, they're in that room wearing those blue jackets, and that's why it's truly rewarding to me to have a lifetime of not just like you mentioned earlier, not just work relationships,
Yeah.
but these personal connections that are so meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. So at what point? So I'm visualizing this happening, and it's incredible because you had a drive, as a kid. Like it's coming through loud and clear that like you knew what you wanted to do. Like I hate to throw youth under a bus right now, but that hustle that you had,
Yeah.
a lot of kids today don't have that. You were going out of your way, you were doing these things, you were putting yourself out there, and that's absent a lot now. But that, I mean, that was the reality of what got you to this point. What came next? Because I know there's a Ranger boat connection somewhere.
Yeah.
How did that change?
Yes. So that, again, back to this thing. I'm there, and I'm getting to know Nina Wood. She sits in the in the audience rather, and got to know her. And then just by detour from that marina job I was working, I actually fished 3 invitationals, 2 one year and then another one another year, but whatever. But I asked her for some clothes and shirts, and she kind of warmed up to me. And then she made a lot of this. Let's say she made a lot of the decisions around that place back then.
Yeah.
I told Forrest, I really want to come to work for you all. And they just said, well, get your college taken care of. And I did. And I drove to Flippin from Tennessee, and I just showed up at Ranger, and
just showed up, like no announcement.
Showed up, no appointment. And Forrest has got his pipe, and he like bites it in half, like, what are you doing here?
Oh, this is great. Oh my gosh.
I was all around, I think I was all around 22 years old.
Yeah.
And he said, well, we don't have anything, but let us think about it. And I left so dejected, drove back home 7 hours, and get home. My mom says they call them. And this is in 1982. And so they hired me, and I literally was, in modern day terms, what we call it now, is I was Forrest Wood's caddy.
Right.
But I had a public relations job. But I did a lot of things there. But primarily what I did was I took his boat to the tournament. He and Nina flew in, but I had to take that thing. We laugh about it today. When he won the 1979 New York Invitational, he bought his and hers Lincoln Continentals, one for him, one for Nina. And I'm talking the long ones.
Oh yeah.
I had it. They put air shocks on that sucker, and that's what I had to tow his boat to.
Wow.
And, I did that, and I learned so much more about myself because, let's face it, Flippin, Arkansas is a huge culture shock for somebody who's just out of college. There's no Domino's pizza. There's no girls. There ain't nothing. And,
nope.
They taught me a lot about myself, because I'm young and cocky. I'm college educated. I'm ready.
Yeah.
And they showed me that I so was not ready, and that there was ways to do that. And so I was there for, I think 3 years, but just, I was restless culturally. It was a big adjustment, and deep down, I always wanted to work for Bass. But that's how it started.
That's incredible. Craig, tell me you have a picture of that somewhere, of the Lincoln, the giant boat Lincoln with a Ranger on the back. Please tell me you have a picture of that.
The Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
I've got it because Pete Robbins wants to see it. I think I've got one somewhere. I would
love to see that.
Because
oh my gosh.
The first time I had to take that sucker to a tournament was I think it was Ohio River, one of those summer things. I could not back the boat. I couldn't back it down. Basil Bacon was making a joke out of it at the induction. Said, "Yeah, remember I had to get out in front of Forrest and back that boat down while you were there." I was terrified.
Gosh.
I mean, man, backing it down with that thing. But eventually they got a Suburban. But yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
tooled around in a Lincoln Continental with a Ranger boat.
Oh my gosh. I cannot even imagine. I'd love to see that image. I'd love to see that. So the Ranger gig then parlays into actually going to work for Bass. So like, all these years later, when you cornered Ray at the hotel, it actually happened. Tell me, how did that happen? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I was involved with Bass then through Ranger, so there was already involvement. And then what happened was Harold Sharp, the original tournament director, he retired, and so Dewey Kendrick was promoted to his place. Dewey needed an assistant,
right?
And I'll never forget it. There was a team championship of some kind at Lake of the Isles. They're on the Thousand Islands, and that's when it was almost like a megabucks course where the teams, and they were like two guys, like two pros, like Nixon and Tommy, and they rotated. And so I was helping Dewey just kind of move the boats around on the time. And he said, "The job's open. It's yours." I mean, right there. He said, "But there's one interview question." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Could you DQ Rick Clunn?" I froze. And Dewey's like, "Well, there's only one answer, and it ain't yes, or no."
Yeah.
And I said, "It's yes, I could." And he said, "You got the job." And, but
Oh my
it's
God.
funny, but think about it. It made me realize the tremendous responsibility that came with that job.
It's a huge responsibility. Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he made us I carried a copy of the rules in my wallet, because that's how, Harold Sharp, days that he was. And so, and it was a fantastic experience being his assistant, because during those years, there were so many things that he accomplished and Bass accomplished. And I got to be there for him.
Yeah. Yeah. That in the history of Bass, and I mentioned it in my Hall of Fame speech, but that to me was, the most iconic, like, golden era of bass fishing to me. Like, when I close my eyes and I think about the passion that I have for the sport, why I love it, I immediately, I don't go to my time in the sport. I go to that time, right? For me, it's the early 80s to, the mid 90s, late 90s, like that. And outside of my involvement, dude, that's the most amazing time for me from the sport, and to be involved in it directly, working for Bass, dude, that must have been incredible. Do you look back on that and just think, I mean, because a lot of times when something's happening, you don't realize, right? You're engaged in something and you're just doing it, and then, like, all of a sudden, like, life is like that. You stop and you look and you're like, holy shit, I'm bald and I'm gray, and oh yeah, my oldest kid is 25. Like, what just happened? But do you look back on that and think how, that was special, man? That was special.
Yeah. I mean, it's last year I was we're doing a historical documentary, and getting a lot of those memories recorded. And so my part was go to Montgomery, and so my part was seated for the interview. I was talking about Helen Sevier, Bob, and Dewey. But in the deal, to answer your question, in my part about Helen, here's what happened was the workforce in that building as a whole during those 80s, when you were talking about, we were all in our 20s. I mean, I was 20. In my mid-20s, I was assistant tournament director, and a few years later, I'm associate editor of Bassmaster and Bass Times. But literally, that building was full of 20-year-olds, early 30s. Helen empowered us to be part of all of those things going on, and it energized us. I mean, we were young, we're full of energy, we're full of goals, and she fed it. And we didn't realize it then, but I mean, at this age I am now, I did. And that's how we were able to do those things. I mean, we were closing $1 million issues of Bassmaster in ad sales. We were the non-endemics. People say, well, we need non-endemics. We had non-endemics in the 80s. Chevrolet,
Yeah.
Kodak, Polaroid, Rubbermaid, BP
Wrangler.
Oil,
Yeah.
Wrangler,
Yeah.
And that was all because of a lot of it had to do with Helen's leadership. But, and before that, it was still the momentum of what Ray and Helen and Bob and Harold had done, and then Dewey, who I worked for, and Dave Preck, they all just took it on to the next level. It was amazing. Like you said, it was the best of times, really.
Best of times. Without a doubt, I can say that was the golden era of bass fishing. That was the best. Was the tournament director job must have been stressful too, though, right? Like cool because you're getting to see the sport that you love and you're getting to participate in it directly. But talk about that stress. I mean, you carried a copy of the rules in your pocket, but it pretty stressful.
Yeah, yes and no. Again, when you're young, you don't really feel stressed like you do when you're older. But, the thing about us back at the time, and this is what ESPN never could understand when they bought us, was they were amazed at what we did with such a small group.
Right.
When I was in tournament with Dewey, there were four of us in the office, and that's it. And we pulled off the classic. Literally the entire office went to the classic except for customer service and fulfillment in the back building. But yeah, there were some stressful times because it was we didn't have the technology like for weather forecasting and things like that we had now. We had I'll never forget, there was a situation at Sam Rayburn where two guys didn't come back. They didn't make it back to the weigh-in. It was one of those February tournaments, and we were up all night looking for them, working with the sheriff's department. And we had this, I made this map, and we had grid spaces on the lake map. And the next morning, we called all of the boats in like it's a takeoff, and they were going to go out and look for these two guys. About the time I'm starting to line up boats, I'm looking out in the distance, and there they come. They had broken into a hunting cabin, and they'd eaten all the food, and they were good to go. But the stress was, there were some stressful moments. Classics could be pretty stressful.
Yeah.
Because we literally had to do everything, because back then we also provided all the boats.
Right.
Had we gotten out of that by the time you won?
We were still, I think my first, let's call it half a dozen classics, was still with a sponsor boat. And my first classic, which was 99, we still had the limited tackle. So I think in 2000, I think they changed the limited tackle. And then I think it was the classic, maybe it was a Lay Lake classic that the year after that, they changed it. I think it was the second, it was the Lay Classic that Kevin won, was the last classic that we had to use their boats. And then they changed to where we were allowed to use our own rigs. So, that was a cool time too. Like I liked the premise of limited tackle. I liked the premise of being in identical boats. There were cool parts of that, but I do think it was the right decision to let us be in our own rigs. If you qualify all year in your own rig, you should probably fish the championship in your own rig. So that makes sense. I see all this happening in your life. Like you were always had one singularly focused direction. Like I think you knew from a very early age that you wanted to be in this sport. And this is amazing. Like you're making this happen. Like it's not like some random thing. Like you're creating this. You're creating this path for yourself. At what point did you then take that transition to the writing? Because like I said, people hearing this for the first time, Craig, we got a lot of young guys listen to this podcast. They're going to be blown away because they don't know you as anything else but a great writer at Bass. Like that. So they're going to be blown away listening to this. But at what point did you make that transition?
Well, again, just being at Bass, there were so many opportunities. I was there at the right time, really, to be honest with you, just like we have all of that. But I put myself, unknowingly at the time, I didn't know it, but I put myself in the right places at the right time. And if that sounds like a Clunn classic speech, if there ever was one, it is.
Yeah.
I was in the moment. I was in the
Yeah.
zen, wherever. But I was always deep down wanted to be in the media and write and be an editor, maybe. Never thought I'd be what I did. So I went to Dave Precht, and it was the same thing. There was an opportunity. I said, Dave, I want to move into editorial. I didn't have any formal experience at all. And it's his typical Dave Precht. He took me to lunch and he said, well, Scott on the Line is due tomorrow, 3,500 characters. And that was how I knew I got the job. I was to write Ray Scott's column for Bassmaster, which
just like that over lunch, you were tasked with this.
Yeah, but let me tell you, I went home that night. We had just had MacBooks or Macs.
Yeah,
I stayed up all night writing that thing, and all into the day like I'm cramming for a final.
Yeah,
took it in, had it, and he prints it out. And Dave used a purple pen for corrections. It looked like he had spilled purple ink all over that column. And that was my introduction to editorial.
Oh, man.
I went on to write Ray's column for 20 years, and it was truly rewarding. But, then we started Bass Times, and I had another mentor, Matt Vincent, who
I do. Yeah.
He didn't mince any words at all.
Yeah.
And it just, they were very forgiving. And I embraced it as a craft. And, so yeah, I was in editorial for 10 years or so, either as a senior writer or as associate editor of the magazines.
Yeah.
And then the website got launched just kind of as an afterthought.
Yeah.
And they needed somebody to take it over, and I relaunched it. So I really launched it to where it was, and made it to where it produced revenue. And that was probably my moment. That's when I felt like I had been literally set free. There were no boundaries. I could do what I wanted to with it. And technology was crazy. You no longer had to use the written word. We had video and everything else. And then of course ESPN came around, and that was probably the biggest turning point for me in a career. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's such a cool story. I look at my career, it reminds me a lot of the same things where, it's like a stair, and where you want to go up those stairs, but it's like one thing leads to the next leads to the next. And it's like these things happen. And if they didn't happen, you'd never get there, and that happened in your life for sure. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's so cool to hear it, man. I want to change direction a little bit. And there's two things I want to talk to you about, because we're both older guys in the sport now. We've both been around, and Craig, you've been in it a little longer than I have, but I want to talk about how things are different now. Let's start with the writing, because, let's start with the way people are consuming bass fishing now. You've been there from the beginning, from, just the old school guy writing literally tick, 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 tick on a typewriter almost, right? Ching, to this digital content machine of today. Talk about that, because I'm really curious to hear your opinion on, is it better now? Is it worse now? Do you like the old days? Do you like the way people are consuming the information today? Talk about that change.
Yeah, that's a good question, because, here's the thing. There's so many different platforms, channels, or whatever you want to call it. There's social, there's web, there's whatever. There's something else new out there we don't know about, TikTok and wherever the next to that is. It's what I feel like we have to do, and I think what we're doing that is we have to accommodate how that consumer wants to ingest that media.
Right.
And find the best way to get that directly to them. For an old dude, it might be a magazine. For a kid, it might be TikTok. And we have got to adapt to the mood of the social mood, or if you will, of how people get that information. Yeah. And I think that, the main thing that that we can do as far as a service is through education and showing people how to.
Right.
We've got the competition covered, no matter which flavor you want. We've got it covered from high school to the top level. Where we've
All
got
the
to
way.
keep bridging the gap is showing people how to do it and capture, if you will, that audience to where we control that narrative if we want to do that. And I mean that by saying, you've got influencers out there, you've got some influencers that are showing their butt and their boobs, and that's an influencer, and that ain't no influencer. But you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
we do it with guys like you, or people who can relate to that age, to that that age of a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an interesting transition. I think it moved a lot quicker than anybody anticipated, especially in our sport or our industry. There was a lot of pushback internally about, do we even need a website? And I'll tell you now, Dave Preck did not want a website at all. No, it's you're taking away the bastion of what we do and what we are, and finally, give it up, and we did.
It's funny because I remember those same conversations. I remember those same days. I remember it with, do you need a website? And then I remember it even more so, more recently with social media. Like I can remember the conversations of, that's Facebook. What's this Facebook thing? Or what's this? Like, what do does he really need this? But like again, I don't want to throw us under the bus, but we are older now.
Yeah.
Was it hard? Is it harder? Was it hard to adapt to these changes? And is it still hard? Like, because as we're talking, changes are happening right now. Is it hard to do that? And I'm just being honest. A lot of people are very reluctant to do this. They're still, top level touring guys right now, older guys especially, that are very reluctant to engage in this new stuff and make these changes. Was it hard to do that for you?
Oh, sure, because it moved so it moved so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, there was not any way to slow it down to your speed. You had to roll with it and adapt to it, and that's why I did my best. I got into video production, and right now when I'm going to the tournaments, most of what I do is custom content. But I got a drone license, and I mastered it. I feel like I'm a really good drone pilot. I think it's just a matter of tuning yourself into what your best ability to do, and don't overreach, because you'll look like an idiot or a failure. Your message will fall on deaf ears. Right. But yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
And I enjoy writing. I mean, there's one thing that I'm doing right now. It's probably the most rewarding thing I've done as far as that goes is, next year is Clunn's 50th anniversary.
Yes.
And I'm getting to do his feature in the magazine. But you have to it makes you slow down. To be honest with you, I have a hard time writing long features because my style has been adapted to web. I mean, if that makes sense, but yeah, it's hard. The older you get, the harder it gets, because here's the thing. I'll admit this is that the older I get, I'm looking at these young kids coming up, and they're better at what I did. And it's frustrating because I don't have an ego, but I'm protective of what I want to do, and they're coming, and you can't slow them down. That's a good thing, and it's really one of the most rewarding things I'm getting to do now is mentor them. But yeah,
it's crazy. It's the same on the fishing side. As you know, I seem like this comes up in every Ike Live over the last 12 to 24 months, but it's the same with these young fishermen. They are so good, and you're proud because you need them. I'm proud that they're coming up, and we need these kids. We need the next generation. But it is frustrating because you look back and you had to work twice as hard, and you had to, there was all this stuff, and now you got the live scoping and all this technology, and they're so darn good at a very young age. And I'm even seeing it with my son. He's 12. He's so darn good at 12. And even being my son, I'm very proud, but I'm like, God, that's unfair. At 12,
Yeah.
at 12, I had to read 5 magazines and go out and practice that technique for 8 months before I could master it. My son's doing it in 20 minutes. What the hell? I'm looking at him like, this is not fair. But it's crazy. It's definitely a different world. But here's a part 2 to this one. And be honest. I know we've talked about this off camera, but I want you to really give me your feelings on it, especially from the fact that, Craig, you were a tournament director at Bass. So I value your opinion on this even more. Is the difference in tournaments now, and not just, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. I don't want to totally throw modern tournaments under the bus because that's not the right thing to do either. But, tournaments are different today. And, we have tournaments that are, I just came a few weeks ago from I cherry picked a MLF Toyota series on the Potomac River. I was climbing the leaderboard every day. Day 1, 30 something place, 12.5 pounds. Day 2, 16th place, 12.5. I was going to 12.5 pound on the death into that top 5. Third day was canceled. High winds, rain, potential flooding. It was bad, but when I woke up and looked out, I was kind of like, man, them fish are biting right now. And the old guy in me that fished in the old days of tournament fishing, I miss that. I miss that. So let me maybe just say it a different way because it is Ike Live. Our tournaments are the way tournaments, are we just a bunch of pussies now? Or talk to me about tournaments are different nowadays. I want to get your opinion on this.
Yeah, they're different as far as a lot of ways. Yeah, I couldn't do this. I couldn't. There's no way. No Lisa, Talmadge, and Chris.
Yeah. And in their defense, again, it's a tough job. It's a tough job.
It's hard. I mean, I sat with them for a long time in Plattsburgh when they were trying to decide what they're going to do for the next week at St. Lawrence. And I'm thinking, oh God, there's no way I could do this now. There's so many decisions that you have to make that you couldn't have made back in the day that were simple. It's like, okay, we're going to do it this way, and that's it. You have to second. I'm not going to say you got to second guess it, but you've got to consider the liabilities involved.
Yeah.
That you never had to do that before. But as far as that goes, it's not like it used to be. There's so many different variables involved in it now. The forward-facing sonar, you know, and I mean, we could do another story on that, and I'm not really the one to talk about that, but it's not going away. It's not.
Right.
It's not going to go away, and technology being technology, it's going to take off and it's going to keep going. Yeah. And we can't stop that at all. It's mainstream.
Change is going to happen, right? Change is inevitable, right?
Yeah, and the consumer is going to have accessibility to that technology.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of the weather calls are really tough. I know that when I was doing it, I'm not answering your question, but it shows the differences that, we had three things we do is one, we would call the weather service and talk to a forecaster because we didn't have anything. And secondly, when we get that information, we would hand out a strip of paper at the takeoff on a little string that when they got their boat, like, watch your ass today, the wind's going to blow, right? Whatever the case may be. But, the third thing was, and I say this so you can see this, is Dewey or me, we'd walk outside of our motel room in the dark and, yep, looks good, we're going.
Look at the trees. Lick your finger. And so it's hard to make those calls. There's some that probably could have been made differently, but you got to roll with what you do, Yeah. I think it's just me being, I think when you're engaged in something for so long and things change, I understand change. And maybe as you get older, you get more reluctant to it. But the part of the allure of the sport for me was those moments of, this is the playing field, right? this is the playing field, and you have to adapt to that playing field and make decisions based on that. Water rising, water falling, rain, wind. Do I make that run? I miss that. I feel like a lot of that has been taken away. And I don't want to sound bitter because safety is very, very important. I get that.
It's changed the way it's changed tournament strategies.
Yeah.
I'm listening to you say that. And yes, it has changed that part of the game, but it's a part of the game.
Yeah. 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 And the same could be said for forward facing sonar. It's the same thing. I'm not bitter to the level of, Randy Blockett. Yeah. But I also do miss the days where I felt more like it was you against the fish, like you against a creature in the unknown environment. And, now it's kind of like, I'm a big fan. Listen, when I don't make the cuts, I don't know if you know this, but when I don't make the cuts, dude, I watch every second because, part of me is like pissed off. Like, I got to know what I did wrong. I'm like, I have to learn. But I am, as a fan of the sport, Craig, I can tell you that I am so disenchanted with watching recently just because of, and I think we'll figure out a better way to cover it. But boy, it's sometimes hard to watch just as a fan, me as a fan watching it, so I don't know the solution to that, but there's going to be a solution to that, Yeah,
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with how we show how we present it to the audience.
Right.
And I think that's, that's not a good answer to what you were trying to do, but that is one thing that we do control, and we don't fabricate it. But there are different ways I feel like that we can present that technology or that information to the audience.
Yeah. Just a spinoff on that. I think probably a real good thing to talk about, and it reminded me when I was at the Hall of Fame. It really, set in a little bit as I looked out at this amazing sea of faces, and you mentioned it, you get there and you're looking around and you're like, oh my gosh, that's Tommy Martin over there. Oh, look, that's Stacey King, and it's funny because I had to walk around with Vegas, not just during the event, but the next day we went back to the museum. We walked through the aquarium, amazing aquarium. And we went back into the Hall of Fame exhibit there. And I'm going through to a 12-year-old, explaining the history of the sport. Like me and you take that for granted because we're a part of that, right? But he's 12. And so, he doesn't know Bobby Murray and he doesn't know Billy Westmoreland or, these names, Al Lind, right? Like I'm teaching him that. So I love that the Hall of Fame has a responsibility to we're capturing the history of the sport. But when I looked out, it was very few, it was an older crowd. And part of that's by default, but talk to me about growing the sport. Or, and I value hearing these ideas from a guy like you. Are we doing the right things to grow the sport? Or should we be doing other things to grow the sport? Because as much as you want to preserve history, you want to keep growing it, right? We're responsible. Me and you and everybody listening to this podcast, if you're 30 years or older, you're responsible for growing the sport. Are we doing a good job?
I think we are. I do. I think we are given, we are given the distractions that are part of everyday life.
Yeah.
And our attention span is much shorter because of all of these things that we ingest everything on quickly. We're just programmed to move quickly. And I really do, Mike. Things like the Ike Foundation, the high school, the college, even
awesome.
We're doing the best. I feel like we're doing the best we can with what we've got. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying that we've got a lot of competition out there from everything. And it's not just fishing, golf, hunting, it's everything.
Right.
Again, at the speed of all of this media is going, because that's how we get all of our information anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think we're doing a lot of the right things. Like I look at the high school and college, and I look at even the kayak series. Like I was just involved in a kayak tournament. I see the potential for growth, and giving people access to the sport is what we need to do, and we're doing that. So I think we're doing a lot of the right things. I just hope we can keep up. I hope that it doesn't get away from us, because there are a lot of distractions, man. I see it with my kids. There's just a lot of other things, but I'd hate to not be able to pass that love on to the next group of people. It's so important. And again, I think everybody's responsible for doing that.
Well, we've got to take the initiative, like you do, like I'm doing, and we've got to make that a priority as individuals and as a whole, really.
Yeah. Switch gears here a little bit, and I want to corner you on something. I kind of did already, and you gave me an answer, but I want to corner you again now that we're live here on this podcast. And the timing of this is probably great because you're doing this awesome piece on Clunn on his 50th season. And I know his viewpoint on this, but Craig, you've been doing it a long time. Got to hear it on this show just from you. It's amazing how long you've been in this. When do you see the retirement? When is that R word going to happen? Do you see that day coming, or are you in Clunn's camp? Is there no retirement in sight for you?
Now that's an interesting question. I don't see retirement by choice.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that. I want to stay around because really what I want to do is, the funny thing that happened again last year was I was looking at Bob and Helen and Dewey, and I'm thinking, back when I was young, they were the old person. Like I'd look at Bob Cobb's like, God, he's old. And now they're looking at me like, God, Craig Lamb, he's old. When is he going to retire? And what I'm getting to do that I want to hopefully get to keep doing is I want to mentor them and give them the same opportunities that I had when I was mentored by these original pioneers.
Yeah.
But as far as retiring, I've got to look at it that, again, the comment earlier about these younger kids that are coming up, their video skills are like your sons. They developed at a very young age.
It's crazy.
And, at a certain point in time, I've got to step aside and let them do all that. And that again, that might happen not by my own decision.
Yeah.
I would really like to be around for a few more years. I don't have any records to set. I don't have any other goals really, other than just to be able to go out on my own and not be forced.
Right.
It's going to be hard because I've done nothing but travel my whole entire life.
Right.
And, there would be a massive disconnect when I do that because, again, you guys are my family. I like to say when I go to a tournament location, there's 100 of my best friends already there in a town that I've never gone to. And that's going to be an adjustment. But yeah, I think about it. I think about it more now than I probably did a year ago. It's hard to travel anymore. It's a bummer sometimes. So,
yeah. It's you get used to that routine, and it's the same for me. And I can tell you that I took a little break right around COVID. And the year after, I actually took a little break, not a retirement, but I just took a little pause. And there were elements that I loved about the pause, but there were more elements that I didn't like about the pause. And you hit it you said it so well. I missed that life, which is my life. It's been my life for 35 years. I missed the travel, and I missed the people, and I missed that environment because it's so comfortable. It's who I am, right? And I think that's going to be the hardest part for me too. Exactly what you said, is that's what I love to do. And I've heard Rick say, like, what are you going to do? Retire to do what you're doing? What am I going to do? Retire? And I'm going to keep doing my hobbies. My hobbies happen to be my profession. It's the same thing, right? Like I'm going to fish anyway. Now I do have some other strange hobbies that would give me more time to engage in some of those strange hobbies. I think you have a couple side hobbies too. So you'd have more time for that. But you would definitely miss, I think I would miss a lot of elements of it. And it's hard for me to wrap my hands around the exact time. I think you're going to know when you're going to know. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that 100. And Clunn and I spent a couple of days with him, and he really alluded that too. The same thing. He's going to know when he knows.
Right.
And he's tuning up with himself to know, and he knows. He's not physically capable as much as he was. We all are. And I think we all will. And I think the main thing for us is to be able to go out at the right time and not stay in it overly too long.
Right.
Where it kind of gets in the way, like, God, get out of here.
Yeah. It'll. I think it's going to happen when it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Why have you here? Do you want to mention any of your strange hobbies? Because I've got some weird ones. I'll just give you 3 of my top ones. So I collect old ink bottles. That one's actually true. I collect Cabbage Patch dolls. That one's not true, but it is in the media handbook. Civil War reenactment. That one wasn't true, but became true after a trip to Gettysburg. So I've got some weird hobbies. So do you want to talk about any of yours while we're here live?
Nothing really weird. I'm really into ham radio.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it because it gives me a chance to do something where I get to talk to people around the world.
It's awesome.
That's fun. There's some technology in it. It's kind of a lot about fishing, because you're around a lot of people that like to do it. So I'm really involved in that.
Super cool.
A lot of different levels. Gosh, I don't know. Kind of boring.
Well, boring is good sometimes.
Yeah, I'm looking around the room. I don't see anything. Anything in here really. There's a ham radio. That's all bass stuff. So.
Oh man, that's so cool. Well, I can tell you this. Like I said it in the very beginning before you came on, but this has been really cool for me, and like this whole last couple of weeks is just surreal. But today, being able to interview like this, I feel like it's come full circle. Like the first time we met years and years ago, 98, 99, whatever that was, sitting down nervous, doing an interview with a guy that I knew about. You didn't know about me, but I knew about you. Like it's funny. And here we are all these years later, and it's like, it just feels so full circle, surreal to me. And it's such an honor to know you and to be able to work with you all these years. And now to have you on the podcast. Thank you, man. Thank you. Very special.
I'm grateful because I feel the same way, man. It's
very special.
Yeah, to be able to connect like this is really kind of full circle,
Yeah, very special. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. This was a treat for me. I got to hear some stories. I tried to do as much research as I could, but I got to hear some stories I didn't know about, which is which is always fun. So
there's some dirt back there. Maybe we do that on another time when we do, like one of the ones where there's beer involved or something.
Oh yeah. They're a little more rowdy. I'd love to have you back on one of the other ones, especially when we get to the after hours. We had. Oh yeah. I don't know if you knew this, but real quick, I'll mention if you're listening to this podcast right now, if you're really hardcore, if you're a more recent fan and you want to go back, start at episode 1 and you'll find this one. I'm not even going to give it to you, but Craig, we actually had Bob Cobb on for just a little bit on an after hours segment. And Bob was, as many as we've had gone into it was about midnight. Bob had a few at that point, and it was the best 5 minutes I've ever had with Bob Cobb. It was unbelievable. So I'd love to have you back on an after hours.
I'm sure that was pretty epic.
It was epic. It was epic. But thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm grateful. Thanks for everything you guys do, you and Becky. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Craig, you take it easy, man. You're the best.
See you, man.
Later.
See you.
All right, guys. There you have it. Now tell me that wasn't awesome. If you're listening right now, or if you're watching this right now and you didn't think that was awesome, you just suck, because that was amazing. So great to hear from Craig. Now what an inspiration for a lot of people, for me, for a lot of people in the sport. But listen to me. If you're a young guy listening to this podcast right now, and we have a lot of them, if you're a grade school or a high school or a college kid, dude, think about the beginning of this interview. Look at the hustle that Craig had. Have that hustle. Do not lose that hustle. You want something, make it happen. Put yourself in a position where it can happen. Don't be afraid to show up at Forrest's door and knock, right? Don't be afraid to stalk Ray Scott. Do those things. Put yourself in that position. That's what you got to do to be successful, man. So awesome to have Craig on the show. Guys, I want to remind you, head over to the IkeFoundation.org. You heard a lot of stuff about growing the sport. If you want to get information on how to help, you can help grow the sport, get kids involved, go on over to the IkeFoundation.org. We also have our scholarship dinner coming up this winter. It's actually, I think it's in January. But it's never too early to sign up for that. Got a lot of great things happening over there with, of course, a great banquet and dinner and auction and all kinds of great stuff happening over there. So look at that. And then one last reminder on the hat, guys. We've got a limited supply of the Ike Hall of Fame hats. Really cool hat. I love this one. Very, very proud to wear it. Head over to MikeIconelli.com. Go to the shop. Got about 100 of these hats left. If you want to get one, get it over there. If you want to request a signature, I can even sign it for you. Last but not least, keep your comments coming in. I'm so happy you guys are enjoying Ike Live 2.0. We've got a lot of great guests coming up. Halloween special, of course, coming up. Going to be posting more of that on social media. So thank you for tuning in. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great week. Hope you have a great remainder of the year. And be good. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye. 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 Bye.
You know, right now where we're standing, we're in Camden, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Philadelphia is right there. This is the concrete jungle. And, you know, a lot of those kids, as they grow up, they don't fish. It's interesting because they're surrounded by water, you know, the Delaware River, the Schuylkill, ponds, city park lakes, but they don't have the influence to cast, to fish, to have a rod and reel. And that became our focus, you know, is to target kids in what we call non-traditional areas, you know, urban areas, city centers, where the population's high, and let these kids have an experience. You know, it's amazing. I mean, some of the experiences we've had, whether it's Central Park in New York City, here in Camden, other parts of the country, even just casting.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to see it, isn't it?
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
Yes.
And you know, you see these kids have this experience they've never had, and they light up, you know? The big thing, I think, for the Ike Foundation is we're not saying we want all these kids to become professional anglers.
No.
It'd be great if some of them did, but we want them to have that fishing experience because it ties them to so many other positive things. The outdoors, nature, conservation. Ecology, you know, all these amazing things in life that maybe they wouldn't have been exposed to any other way. We're trying to help with that. So it's important. It's important for us.
Yeah.
We're proud of it.
I subscribe to Bass U TV, and so should you.
Great place to learn about anything you want to know about bass fishing.
You get it at Bass U. We got the best of the best.
I'm not just an instructor, I'm a subscriber.
I'm John Cruz, and I am a subscriber.
You can always learn, and watching Bass U is definitely helps with that. It's something that I like to do, and it's definitely something that you need to do.
If I'm still learning, you should be too.
Subscribe to Bass U because you'll learn how to catch a lot more fish.